Hello there, welcome to Inkquiring Minds. My name is Doug and I'm back with another Pen Resurrection Sunday video. And yes, I'm teasing you again with this Sheaffer balance from the 1930s. I teased you with this before thinking I was going to resurrect it, but I needed some tools. Now I'm not going to do it today because I need some expertise, because all my tools and supplies have come in so I can repair this pen, but I'll probably not get to it until I get back from Europe. But I did want to show you the updated stuff that I got from Pen Tooling. There are a number of tools that are required for repairing a Sheaffer balance from the 1930s, a Sheaffer balance vac filler that is. I already had this tool here, which allows me to pull the blind cap off of the rod, but when I pulled the rod out, I found that I had a rotten rod. These are Ebonite covered steel rods from Sheaffer from the 1930s, and the Ebonite keeps the ink and any liquids from getting at the steel and rusting it. And over the years, some of that moisture has gotten into there and rusted that rod and expanded the Ebonite, and even the end screw broke right off. So that was useless. So I had to measure it and find the correct one from Dale at Pen Tooling. Thank you, Dale. And this is the correct rod. So I've got that part. I also needed new rubber washers that go on the end of that rod that go up and down inside the vac to create the vac seal. You have to get the right size of those. There are 3 sizes. I picked them up from Pendragon's in the UK, and I've got a bunch of medium ones, but I got some small and large as well. But that's not all. The end of this vac filler has a small cartridge that's filled with felt and ebonite and so forth, and they just don't last the years. And you can't just sort of remove them. You have to kind of drill them out, and there's no replacement. But there is a method for making a new seal, and that is the Ron Zorn method. He's from Main Street Pens online, and he created this method of taking a silicone O-ring like that, putting it down at the base of the vac after you've drilled the old packing out, and then dropping in this plastic disc on top of it with a special tool, and dropping acetone on top of that to make that melt and seal the silicone seal inside. I've never done this before, and so I'm going to learn all about it first before I tackle it on this pen. But I've got enough for doing 10 of these pens, and I bought the special tools as well. There are methods of doing it without the tools, but I thought let's do it properly with the proper tools. So I bought them from Dale at Pen Tooling. This is an auger, a reamer, that will go into the vac and carve out the old felt and ebonite packing. And this is a 1/4-inch drill bit to drill the end of that unit. And then there's another tool here. This is the same seal material, and this tool is for the application of the Ron Zorn method of applying the silicone O-ring and that plastic O-ring inside the pen. So now that I have all my parts and supplies and tools, I can go ahead and try to restore this pen. But also, I thought, well, these things, they're not inexpensive, but the shipping is like twice what the little rubber washer is. So I thought, well, I can make those. All you need is a leather punch and this 1mm thick rubber material. So I bought this on Amazon and this on Amazon. I've got all 3 sizes here of these leather punches, and we'll just punch out new ones. So I'm going to give that a try. I've already punched out a few samples to see if they'll work, and then I can just supply my own as I go forward and start repairing these as frequently as I repair Parker Vacumatics, which is what I'm going to do today, because I have a golden pearl Vacumatic from 1940, I'm going to say 1942. This is a 3rd generation Parker Vacumatic in golden pearl. It is a junior model with the 2 cap rings and no blue diamond on the clip, and it has a rather nice gold nib. So this I know how to restore, this I'm going to learn how to restore. So let's take a look at this Vacumatic and see what it needs to come back to the land of the living and the writing right now. So here is the Parker Vacumatic in golden pearl. I'm guessing it's 1942 because that imprint on there is very, very faint. it's stronger on this side, and then when it tails out to made in the, and very, very faint. You probably can't see it on camera, but it looks to me like there's a very faint 2 in there. I might be wrong. We'll have to check the bottom of the nib to find out. From the top, we see the top jewel is in good shape. The clip is very, very tarnished, almost black, but I know from experience that that will come up gleaming. That's gold filled hardware. The golden pearl looks dark and lacks any luster, but you can see some chatoyance down in there. Once that's polished up, it'll be great. Some scratches and gouges here and there, nothing terrible. Some gouges on that side. The cap bands look great, and they're not spinning at all, so that celluloid hasn't shrunk that much. Very tarnished, but that will brighten up very nicely. And then the barrel, lots of wear. I can't see any bite marks or deep scratches. There's the imprint. Vacumatic, and the blind cap, no bite marks. Blind cap comes off, and it feels like there is a diaphragm attached in there. It's got some resistance to it. So I might do a test fill to see whether it actually holds any water or not. Let's take the cap off and take a look at that nib. Parker, USA, and there's a date code there I can see, and it's 8 with 2 dots. So I'm thinking that I was seeing a partial 2, but it's probably an 8. 2 dots is the second quarter of 1948, and with this, then that was the final year of these Parker Vacumatics. The Ebonite section looks like it's in good shape. No cracks anywhere. No cracks along the edges of the cap. Good shape. And the Ebonite feed looks pretty good too. So the first thing I'm going to do is put this in my ultrasonic bath of pen flush, which I make myself. It's 9 parts distilled water and 1 part ammonia, just household ammonia. We'll put it in there for 2 to 3 minutes, something like that, just to agitate out any old ink and help me remove that section, and we'll try to get that vac pump out. But before I do all that, I'm just going to test fill this with water, and we'll just check what it weighs to begin with. It weighs 8.4, 8.39, press tear, and that's accepting 1.59, 1.6 milliliters of ink. So that diaphragm is working perfectly. So there might not be a need to take that pump out of there, but I'll do an inspection anyway. So it's into the pen flush with you. Okay, that nib is brightened up a little bit in the bath. Let's see whether we can get that section off here. Get some rubber gripper material. No, I need to add some heat. Perhaps when someone replaced that sack, I bet you that's a diaphragm replacement right there. I bet you they put a little bit of shellac on those threads. Very sticky. Yeah, there was definitely some shellac on those threads right there. Not necessary, but people seem to do it when they restore these pens. And there's our breather tube. There we go. Rather clean, that yellow color of celluloid. And that'll all go back in the bath. And now I can rinse that out and get my inspection camera in there and check out that diaphragm to see how it's functioning. And that seems to be working well. Looks like a relatively new, well-formed and functioning diaphragm inside that Vacumatic pump. Excellent. So now we don't have to remove that pump, which is one of the most difficult parts of any restoration. So now I'm going to retrieve that nib unit from the bath and see whether we can get the nib and feed out. So here's our knockout block. Let's find a hole big enough for it. There we go. And use the appropriate size rod and our small hammer and see whether we can dislodge this feed. There we go. Lots of dark ink in there. And there's our nib with the date code clearly there. Looks like it's in really good shape. I'm just going to check it with my loupe. Yeah, it needs a little bit of adjustment, and it looks like an extra fine to me. There, that's roughly pretty good. Pretty good front and back. We'll polish that up and see what it looks like on the other side of the screen. And here's our Ebonite feed, and we'll shine up just the visible part right there. And there's our section. No gouges or marks on it. We'll just polish that up. And I'll have to get off that extra shellac that's on those threads. A little bit of methyl hydrate will do that. Keep it from being so sticky going back in. And here's our nib all polished up. You can quite clearly see the .8 dot right there, but there's an R. That usually means a replacement nib. So this might actually be a 1942 pen with a 1948 replacement nib. And it's looking shiny on all sides. And there's our shiny Ebonite feed and our shined up section. There's the celluloid breather tube out of the bath, looking completely clean and brand new. So I think we can put this unit back together again, and then I'll put it back in the pen, and we'll do some test writing with it to see whether that nib needs any work. Just going to double check it again for alignment, and it's still slightly misaligned. So I'm going to put my magnifying eyes on and use my nib pliers on it just to align that nib perfectly. Then we'll put it together, and we have to check the alignment again after that. So we're going to put that section back in the barrel. I'm just going to add a little bit of silicone oil to it just to make it thread a little bit nicer. And there's still some shellac on there. Might not be a bad thing. So I put that back in the barrel so that I get a little bit more grip on it while I'm trying to push the nib and feed in. I've taken the feed and I've buffed it up a little bit. I buffed up that Ebonite shaft there with some 400 grit sandpaper just to make it a little bit slippery. And then we're going to put the nib on the feed and line it up as best we can, just like that. Grip it top and bottom with some rubber mat gripper material and slide it around inside there and find if there's a sweet spot and a good place for it and give it a push. Check the back end. The stem of this was poking a little bit further out before, but I like it being flush like that. And let's put the breather tube back in and put it back in the pen. Now we have to check the alignment again because that feed will sometimes push the nib out of alignment. No, seems pretty good. Whether you can see it there or not, looks pretty good. Now I'm going to dip test that nib. And here I have some Watermans. Just going to dip that nib and give this a try. What should we call it? Stick with the nib dating because that's the only one I can actually be sure of. So we'll call it a 1948 Parker Vacumatic Golden Pearl, and this is a junior, and it is an extra fine nib. So let's check these line widths carefully here. No pressure, and let's push it a bit. Yeah, so it's got a bit of bounce to it here. Look at that. But there's a lot of feedback bordering on scratchy. So I'm going to do some more tuning for this nib. But it's very, very wet, very nice. So I'm sure I can tune that up to make it smoother. In the meantime, I'm going to take, that shellac is sealed again. I'm going to take that section out and put it aside. And I'm going to polish up that barrel and end cap. But first, I want to see whether I can get that clip off. So we use some gripper material and an HB pencil as a mandrel to press against. And we push and turn and see whether it will unscrew. And if it doesn't unscrew, we'll need to use some heat. Let's see if that's turning. It is. Excellent. So there goes that end jewel. Put that aside. Don't lose it. And then we can take a slot screwdriver and unscrew that brass nut that's holding the clip in place. And there we go. And there is the clip. Still looking rather tarnished. A little bit better from the bath, but we'll see what it looks like once it's polished up. And here's the cap. Before polishing, all the way around. And here is the barrel. Before polishing, I'll make sure I avoid that imprint. It's already really faint. There it is there. You can see it fades out right there. But we'll get all those scratches and abrasions out and polish it up like new. And to polish this up, I'm going to go through my micro mesh from 1500 grit through 12,000 grit. I'll mask off that cap band with some low tack blue masking tape until I get to 4,000 grit, and then I'll take the masking tape off and polish those cap rings with 6,000 to 12,000. Once I've gone through all the micro mesh on this, I'll take it to my buffing wheel where I'll use my polishing compounds to buff it up to a showroom shine. So hidden under the clip was a gouge right there. I've sanded almost all of it out, but there's also signs of crazy glue being used to hold the clip in place. So whoever did this gouged it and put the clip right over that gouge, which was a smart thing to do to hide it. But I'm going to sand it with some 400 grit sandpaper right on that spot to get that gouge out, and then go through the micro mesh. And here we are, hot off the buffing tool. There's the clip, all shiny and new. I'm rather impressed with that. It was pretty dingy. And you notice that there's not a brass substrate there, but it's silver. So I'm not sure whether that's actual silver alloy, or aluminum. I would think that it's a silver alloy. Very nice. And here is the cap, all shiny and new, all buffed up. And that gouge that was at the top of that cap under the clip is gone, and the cap bands are shiny and new. And here is the barrel, beautiful and shiny, no gouges or anything, no scratches, showroom condition. And let's take a look for that imprint. There it is, US Parker Vacumatic, and the made in the USA and the date are faded. But I got my microscope out and looked, and it certainly looks like an 8 that's in there, and I have some theories about why that's faded as well. We'll get to that later. So now I can put this pen back together again because the vac is intact. He said he's a poet and he didn't know it. I'm going to add a little bit more silicone oil there, and I'm just going to leave that bit of shellac on there because it actually sticks it down pretty nicely. It's still not a lot of shellac, so it's easy to get off again, especially with that silicone oil. There we go. Now the other thing I want to check on is cap clearance. That nib is sticking out a little bit more than it did before. There he is, a poet again. And no, it's not dragging on the inside of that cap at all. So we've got a good cap clearance for that nib. And now we can put that clip back on again. And I want to position it where it's actually pointing at the imprint, which is directly between those two breather holes right there and there. And I think that's right where it was before. So we'll get that brass nut started. So let's get started.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here.
Just making sure it's traveling nicely. And sometimes I've had shellac in those threads as well, and that needed to be cleaned out. So I'm just going to tighten it down. There we go. Nice and tight. And then we can put the end jewel on, get it started.
Let's get it started.
And then just give it a push.
Push, push in the bush. You know I like to go. Push, push in the bush.
With some rubber gripper. And there we go. Give the whole pen a bit of a buff. And there it is. All brand new again. And I did want to show you the transparent barrel there. Isn't that gorgeous? So now I'm going to fill this up with some ink and do some nib tuning and some more writing, and then my conclusions about this gorgeous fountain pen. Okay, this pen is looking gorgeous now. I polished up the top jewel as well on my buffer to make it shine. Now we got to fill it with ink. So I'm going to weigh the pen again. Weighs 10 grams with the blind cap on. Press tear. Leave the blind cap there. get out some Waterman's Serenity Blue. I was having some conversations with some members today on my Sunday pen resurrection video, asking about Waterman, that its pH isn't exactly neutral. And that's true, but it's not the pH so much. From my research, it is the saturation in the ink that does damage to latex. So heavily saturated inks damage latex. Waterman Serenity Blue is a very low saturation ink. So washable inks like Quink from Parker and Script from Sheaffer and the 4001 from Pelican, they're all very gentle inks because they're low saturation. So if it says it's washable ink, washable blue, then it's a safe ink for latex. And if you want to see how the Vacumatic works, take a look at the video that I'm pointing to right up there. It is a demonstration using a Parker 51 Vacumatic that is a demonstrator that I borrowed from Murray, and I demonstrate exactly how this mechanism works because you can see it working through the demonstrator. So I'm going to give it 6, 7, 8 pumps until I hear no more bubbles. There, that was 8 pumps, and now I don't hear any more bubbles. So that should be full. Let's put it back on the scale here. 1.58. Exactly what we got before, 1.59. That's an excellent capacity right there. So that's a good latex diaphragm that's inside there. So now I want to polish some of that feedback out of that nib. I'm just going to double check to make sure that the tines are aligned, and they need a little bit of a tweak. So I put my magnifiers on for this. I'm just going to tweak it a little bit. It's a very fine nib. And there we go. I think that's done it. I aligned the nib with the feed a little bit more. It was slightly off, which caused the misalignment in the tines. But it still has a bit of feedback. So I'm going to polish it out with some 8000 and then 12,000 grit micromesh. Drop a little bit of water there. It's a lubricant. I'm going to hold and maintain my writing position to the page, and I'm not going to move my fingers or my wrist. I'm going to actually move my whole arm while I'm doing this, and so I'm going to maintain that angle, no pressure on the micromesh at all, so I don't want to push those tines out. And I'm going to go up and down, side to side, all points of the compass, counterclockwise, clockwise, infinity symbols and figure eights 8 times each. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Who do we appreciate? And then we're going to go to 12,000 grit. Same thing. And let's get a little bit of ink flowing here. Push the button a little bit, get some ink through. It's better, but I'm going to repeat it. It's a very, very fine nib. Let's get on my Dominant Industries MM pad and check the line widths I've got. And it is very fine indeed. That's 0.25 on the horizontal. The vertical is 0.3, and when I push it, it goes to 0.6. So 0.25 to 0.30 to 0.6 millimeters. That's extremely fine. So what are my thoughts about this pen resurrection? Well, I'm very pleased with this one. I love these beautiful 3rd generation stacked celluloid Parker Vacumatic fountain pens in all their colors. The emerald, the silver, the gold, the azure blue, and the maroon wine color. They're all gorgeous. This is a junior model. The only difference between the junior and the major is the cap bands, the major having a wider cap band and the junior having the 2 cap bands, and the clip. The junior doesn't have the blue diamond on that clip. Otherwise, the pens are identical, and this one cleaned up beautifully. I didn't even have to replace the Vacumatic diaphragm in this one because it has one already installed, which leads me to believe that this pen was restored and then neglected, because the latex diaphragm is relatively new, and I think the last restorer added some shellac to that section and also polished the pen to the point where it lost its date code right there. I still have the rest of the imprint, but the date code seems to be gone. I looked at it with my microscope. I did see the faint outline of an 8. Could have been a 2, but I think it was an 8. So it matches the 1948 on the nib. This pen is now in perfect working order and perfect, lovely, polished condition. And it writes like a champ. I went at it with some micro mesh to tame some of that feedback that was on there. The nib material sometimes corrodes a little bit with age, oxidation and that kind of thing. The tipping material is not gold. The tipping material is a hard alloy of iridium, some kind of iridium compound. And so polishing it polished out much of that feedback. As an extra fine nib, it still has a good amount of feedback on there, but you can write with it with absolutely no pressure whatsoever, and it just glides. So this will be a beautiful fountain pen for someone to own, because I'm going to sell it for $200 US plus shipping. If you're interested in purchasing this gorgeous fountain pen, just drop me an email at inkquiringminds@gmail.com with your name and your address, and I'll get you a shipping quote and instructions on how to pay my PayPal. And there you have it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell to get instant notifications whenever a new video is posted. And you can join as a member of my channel for only 99 cents a month. I guarantee I'll answer your comments in the comment section. You'll get cool emojis, badges, sneak peek unboxing videos, as well as instant access to my videos the moment I post them. And basic members get 10% off. Patron level at $5 a month members get 20% off their purchases of these pen resurrections. And that just leaves it for me to say thank you for watching. And that's all she wrote.
I made this.